The ring laser gyro and similar Sagnac effect light instruments are by far some of the best evidence for a flat and stationary Earth. Most people you have heard on the subject do not understand the results of the Sagnac light instruments, which many blind people even believe that these experiments prove the heliocentric globe model. This couldn't be further from the truth and is probably the reason that the mainstream science has never made a big deal about these experiments in order to prove their models. It has been known since the early 1900s with the Michelson-Morley and Michelson-Gale experiments, and then later the Sagnac experiments with the laser gyros, that we can pick up roughly a rotation of 15 degrees per hour between the movement of light and one's position on the Earth. This does not prove, however, that the Earth is moving. All it proves is that light moves at 15 degrees per hour relative to our position on Earth. There was always great debate as to whether a medium existed of which light travelled through, which limited the speed of light, of which this medium was called the ether. Those pro-ether scientists believed that the roughly 15 degrees per hour movement picked up between light and one's position on the Earth was simply the ether rotating. However, pro-heliocentric scientists believed it was the rotation of the Earth that was detected in these experiments. So the main result that came from the Sagnac light experiments actually proved that light did travel in a medium which limits its speed and actually moves independent of the movement from the source of that light. This actually showed that an ether did exist that the light travelled through. So, the great argument has been whether these devices are picking up Earth rotation or the rotation of the so-called ether. While people have struggled to argue this either way, there is clear evidence that it is the ether moving and not the Earth, of which I will share later on. First of all, though, I want you to think deeper on this. We all agree that these devices pick up a 15 degree per hour rotation. This rotation could only be of either the ether or of the Earth. But there is a more pressing problem that these tests detected. The question you really need to ask is, why do these devices not pick up the 30 kilometer per second movement of the annual Earth orbit around the Sun? The devices pick up the daily rotational movement between the Earth and light, but why don't they pick up the much greater speeds of 30 kilometers per second of the Earth movement as it circuits around the Sun? This is what we should expect in the heliocentric globe model. The Sagnac experiment proves that the light travels at a limited speed which is independent of the speed of the source of the light. Therefore, if the Earth is orbiting annually around the Sun, we should pick up this in the experiments as well. However, guess what? We pick up nothing. Absolute zilch movement is found to prove that there is an annual orbit of the Earth around the Sun. All we pick up is a 360-degree daily rotation. No other movement is detected. Now any serious researcher needs to ask why this is. And the most obvious answer would have to be that we are not flying around the Sun at 30 kilometers per second, and that light leaves at the source of the Sun directly towards the Earth, and the only motion detected is a 15 degree per hour rotation of what would either be the Earth or of the ether. This truth completely debunks the heliocentric globe model, and it is only with crazy theories that you can try to dismiss these findings. True scientific experimentation has shown time and time again that the Earth does not rotate annually around the Sun. The only movement detected is this daily 360-degree rotation. So how do we know if it's the Earth rotating 360 degrees daily or whether it's the ether rotating above us? Other than the obvious fact that we don't feel any Earth rotation, the best and most conclusive experiment ever undertaken to understand this was in 1871, and it was called Airy's failure. George Airy set up telescopes and faced them towards a star, so that the light of the star would travel directly down the center of the telescope to be seen at the bottom of the telescope. Now, telescopes need to be tilted slightly as the light travels on an angle due to either this moving Earth or the moving ether. Now, after centering the stars in the telescope and measuring the angle of tilt required in the telescope, George Airy then filled the telescope with water to slow down the light of the star entering that telescope. Now, if the Earth was moving, then the starlight, upon entering the water in the telescope, would move off-center, and the telescope would need to be further tilted to again view the star. However, if the Earth, and therefore also the telescope, was stationary, and it was the starlight moving in the ether, then the light would continue on the same path and stay in the center of the telescope. The reason that the experiment became known as Airy's failure was because he failed to find any movement in the Earth, and the light stayed centered in the telescope. And no further telescope tilt was needed, so we can conclude that, as the Bible declares, the Earth is motionless and at rest. Now, the results of these tests have been known for many decades, and light tests have been repeated hundreds of times over the years, and the results always conclusively fail to prove that there is any movement of the Earth through the universe. Only a daily 360-degree daily rotation has ever been found. And Airy's failure proves that this rotation is not in the Earth, but in the stars and light above, and therefore also in the ether, which is the rotating medium that light travels through, and many have tried and failed to disprove. Since these tests have proven a stationary Earth, the powers that be have made up all manner of crazy theories to try and dismiss the findings, as the atheist scientists know that they must hide this truth, as a geocentric, stationary Earth would prove that we are special, having been positioned at the center of creation by a loving God. We have had conclusive evidence of a stationary Earth backed by modern science for 100 years now, and most scientists still push the unproven heliocentric globe fairy tale. Our geocentric stationary Earth is 100% proven with every scientific test, and your own senses also confirm this truth. Not only are we stationary, but it seems most likely that the Earth is also flat and not a globe. As more and more evidence floods in, it is obvious that we can see way too far past where the globe curve would be. Realistic flat Earth theories around gravity and other observed phenomena are also coming to light and showing that flat Earth is not only reasonable but likely. Big tech has nearly killed off the momentum of the growth that we had in these truths over the last few years, through burying it in algorithms. However, big tech will pass away, but the truth of all of this will still remain. I plead with you to open your mind and break through the trance that modern science has placed on you. You are created special in God, and what we believe down here on earth will affect our whole eternal future. God is declaring to you His creation, and He also wants to reveal to you His great Spirit, which will make Him ever so real to you here in this earthly dimension. Open your heart to Yeshua, who's more commonly known as Jesus Christ, for whom your sins can be forgiven, so that the truth of Almighty Jehovah God will bring you true life. God bless you, and thank you for listening.